In 10 seconds, I will reveal why your current path is likely leading to a quiet, desperate poverty that no amount of overtime will ever fix. If you watch this until the final second, you will possess the precise blueprint to stop the invisible bleeding of your wealth and claim absolute autonomy. If you turn away now, you are effectively choosing to spend your final years in a state of constant, suffocating anxiety, working for survival long after your body has begged you to stop. Every human life eventually reaches a crossroads where the illusion of time disappears and the cold reality of mathematics takes over. We are going to examine the lives of two individuals who shared everything from birth, including their genetics, their upbringing, and their initial economic standing. They walked the same halls of education and entered the professional world with nearly identical salaries and potential. Yet, at the age of 65, the divergence between them was so radical that they seemed to belong to different species entirely. One individual retired with a net worth of $1,400,000 in liquid investments and a home that was completely paid off. He now spends his winters in the warmth of Arizona, moves through life with total financial serenity, and never has to look at a price tag. He is a man who successfully converted his labor into permanent freedom, allowing him to support his grandchildren without a second thought. He is the master of his time, and his wealth serves as a fortress against the unpredictability of the world. The other individual reached the same age of 65 with a mere $180,000 in total savings. He still carries a mortgage with 12 years of payments remaining and lives in a state of perpetual, grinding financial distress. He is forced to work a part-time job at a local hardware store simply because his social security checks cannot cover his basic survival. At night, he lies awake in the dark, calculating whether he can afford his essential heart medication or his rising property taxes. This is not a story about luck, nor is it a story about who worked harder or who was more intelligent. This is a clinical analysis of how a single decade of life can either build a kingdom or craft a cage for your future self. The divergence between these two lives did not happen in their 20s when they were both struggling to find their footing. It did not happen in their 30s when they were focused on the early stages of family and career growth. The transformation occurred entirely within their 40s, the most consequential and dangerous decade of the human financial life cycle. Most people treat their 40s as a period of well-deserved indulgence, believing they have finally earned the right to live large. In reality, the 40s represent the final window of mathematical leverage, where your decisions carry a weight that can never be replicated later. It is the intersection of peak earning power, the remaining runway for compounding, and the stabilization of life expenses. By the time you reach 40, the absolute dollars you earn are usually higher than they have ever been, and higher than they will ever be again. This decade provides the most raw material for wealth construction that you will ever possess in your hands. A professional earning $120,000 at age 45 has a unique opportunity to save in quantities that were impossible a decade earlier. However, this peak earning power is a double-edged sword that often leads to a phenomenon known as lifestyle creep. The second force at play during this critical decade is the remaining time for your money to undergo exponential growth through compounding. At age 40, you still have 25 years until a traditional retirement age of 65. Historically, this is enough time for your invested capital to roughly quadruple in value based on market averages. A single dollar invested at 40 becomes $4 by retirement, but a dollar invested at 55 only becomes $2. This means that the money you invest during your 40s works twice as hard as the money you invest just one decade later. The mathematical leverage of time is a non-renewable resource that drops off a cliff with every passing birthday. Your 40s are the last decade where you can make a mistake and still have enough time for the market to fix it for you. Once you cross the threshold of 50, the math becomes cold, unforgiving, and much more difficult to manipulate in your favor. The third force is the stabilization of your major life expenses, which typically begins to happen during this midlife period. Your career wardrobe is likely established. Your home is furnished, and your children are becoming more independent. This creates a potential margin, a gap between your rising income and your leveling costs that did not exist during the chaotic years of your 30s. The fate of your retirement depends entirely on whether that margin flows into your investments or is devoured by a larger house and a faster car. Let us look at the specific numbers that illustrate this leverage using two households with a combined income of $155,000. Both families start their 40s with $165,000 in their retirement accounts and 2 children to support. The first family decides that their current modest home is no longer sufficient for their perceived social status. They choose to upgrade to a larger property in a prestigious neighborhood, increasing their monthly housing costs by $1,650. To afford this new lifestyle, they reduce their retirement contributions from 15% of their income down to a mere 6%. They tell themselves that this is only temporary and that they will catch up once the children have graduated from college. By the time they reach age 50, their retirement account has only grown to $240,000 despite 10 years of labor. They have lost the most valuable compounding years of their lives to pay for extra square footage they rarely use. When the children enter high school, this family takes on even more debt to fund elite sports camps, private tutoring, and expensive college visits. When it comes time for university, they sign for a Parent Plus loan exceeding $100,000 rather than asking their children to attend a state school. By age 65, this family has accumulated $685,000, which sounds like a significant sum to the uninformed. However, when they run the projections, they realize they will run out of money by age 82, leaving them destitute in their final years. Now, consider the second family who chose a path of strategic minimalism and resisted the siren song of social validation. They decided to stay in their original home, even as their income climbed and their peers moved into mansions. They kept their retirement contributions at a steady 15%, allowing that monthly $1,650 difference to flow into the market. They had honest conversations with their children about the cost of education and chose high-quality state universities with merit scholarships. Throughout their 40s, this family felt like they were swimming against the social current, often being the only ones in their circle without a new SUV. Yet, the aggressive saving combined with 25 years of market growth allowed their balance to triple every decade. By the time they reached 65, they had accumulated over $1,650,000 in their accounts. Their home was paid off, their stress was non-existent, and their autonomy was absolute and permanent. The mathematical difference of nearly $1 million was not earned through different career paths or superior investment skills. It was the direct result of a few specific decisions made during the decade of their 40s. Minimalist money rules are not about living in a cold, empty room or depriving yourself of every pleasure in existence. They are about understanding that every object you own has an ongoing cost that drains your future freedom. Rule number 1 is to calculate the cost per use before you ever allow a purchase to finalize in your mind. If you buy a $500 espresso machine and use it every single morning for 5 years, the cost is less than 30 cents per use. This is a high-value purchase that improves your daily life while simultaneously saving you thousands of dollars at expensive coffee shops. However, a $400 designer jacket worn only twice represents a cost of $200 per wear, which is financial insanity. Rule number 2 is to apply the replacement test to every single physical object currently occupying your living space. Ask yourself if you would spend your hard-earned cash to replace that item if it were to disappear from your life tomorrow. You will find that most of the clutter in your home exists because of inertia and a sense of obligation rather than genuine utility. Minimalists are ruthless in eliminating these items because they recognize that clutter is a silent tax on their mental focus and physical space. Rule number 3 is a strict prohibition against upgrading perfectly functional items simply because you have become bored with them. A smartphone that makes calls, sends messages, and runs your essential applications does not need to be replaced because a new camera lens exists. The average person in a developed nation spends $50,000 on unnecessary phone upgrades over their working lifetime. When you apply this same logic to cars, furniture, and appliances, the lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. Rule number 4 is to create intentional friction for your spending and extreme ease for your systematic saving. Human beings will naturally follow the path of least resistance. So you must engineer your environment to make the right choice, the automatic choice. Remove your credit card information from online shopping portals and delete the applications that encourage impulsive consumption from your phone. Simultaneously, set up automatic transfers that move your investment capital into the market before you ever have the chance to see it. Rule number 5 is to count your possessions regularly to maintain a high level of awareness regarding your consumption patterns. Most people are shocked to find they own 4 times more clothing or kitchen gadgets than they originally estimated in their heads. Once you realize you already own 47 shirts, the urge to buy a 48th shirt begins to feel like a psychological burden rather than a reward. Awareness is the primary defense against the slow, creeping accumulation of things that eventually own you. Rule number 6 is to always rent or borrow an expensive item before you commit to the heavy burden of permanent ownership. Many people buy high-end camping gear or woodworking tools during a phase of temporary enthusiasm that quickly fades away. The gear then sits in the garage, collecting dust and representing thousands of dollars of lost opportunity for your retirement fund. By renting first, you test the validity of your interest and learn exactly what equipment you actually need to be successful. Rule number 7 is to master the lifestyle multiplier effect, which dictates that every major possession creates a hidden ecosystem of costs. A boat requires a trailer, a powerful vehicle to tow it, storage fees, maintenance supplies, and expensive insurance. A purchase that seems singular on the surface will actually trigger a cascade of secondary expenses that can triple the initial price. Minimalists always calculate the total cost of this ecosystem before they ever commit their capital to a new acquisition. Rule number 8 is the most vital psychological barrier you must cross, which is to define what is enough before you earn your first dollar. High earners are frequently trapped in a cycle of endless dissatisfaction because they have never set a finish line for their lifestyle. As their income increases, their expectations expand at the same rate, leaving them with zero net gain in their personal happiness. If you decide that a $30,000 car is sufficient, every dollar you earn beyond that point belongs to your freedom. Rule number 9 is to measure your wealth by your optionality rather than your visible markers of social status. Conventional success is often a gilded cage where a high earner is chained to a toxic job because they have $5,000 in monthly debt payments. True wealth is the ability to walk away from a destructive environment, to take a 6-month sabbatical, or to start a business without fear. This optionality is only available to those who have built a wide margin between their income and their lifestyle. Rule 10 is to practice cyclical decluttering every single week. Rather than waiting for a massive annual purge of your home, removing 3 unnecessary items from your environment every week is a sustainable habit that keeps your mind clear and your space open. This constant awareness allows you to identify the emotional states that trigger your urge to consume and helps you build an immunity to marketing. Prevention of accumulation is infinitely more effective than trying to fix a life that is already overflowing with junk. The financial transformation that results from these minimalist rules will compound over time until it becomes an unstoppable force in your life. A person who follows these principles for 5 years will find themselves with significantly more capital and radically less stress than their peers. The relationship between owning less and having more money is bidirectional and creates a virtuous cycle of security and peace. When your savings account is robust, your psychological need for status and validation through physical objects simply disappears. You do not need an expensive car to feel successful when your bank account already tells you the truth about your absolute power. People who are trapped in the cycle of consumption are usually trying to fill an emotional void created by their own financial insecurity. By addressing the root cause through actual financial resilience, the compulsion to spend money often dissolves on its own without any effort. This leads to a life where you are no longer a servant to the economy, but a sovereign individual with total control. The discomfort of practicing frugality and minimalism in your 40s is a temporary challenge that typically lasts for only 10 years. However, the reward for this discipline is a comfortable, autonomous retirement that lasts for 30 years or more. Conversely, the pleasure of indulgence in your 40s lasts for only 2 or 3 years before it becomes the new normal. The consequence of that indulgence is a constrained, desperate retirement that also lasts for 30 years or more. Picture your 70-year-old self sitting in a quiet living room as the sun begins to rise on a Tuesday morning. In one version of this future, you are planning a trip to see your family, relaxed and confident, because no unexpected expense can threaten you. In the other version, you are sweating over a calculator, wondering if you can afford to turn on the heat this winter. Both versions of you are the direct result of the choices you are making right now in the middle of your life. Your 40s will end eventually, and the decade will pass. Whether you choose to be intentional or whether you choose to drift. The only question that matters is which version of your future self you are currently in the process of creating. The math of the world is cold and indifferent to your intentions, favoring only those who have the discipline to respect its rules. Your 40s are not a time for indulgence, but a time for the final, most important construction project of your existence. This is your opportunity to convert your peak labor into permanent freedom and to ensure that you are never owned by your possessions. The choice is yours to make, but you must remember that you are deciding the fate of a person who cannot go back and change the past. Own your life by owning less, and you will find that the peace of a clear mind is the only true luxury. The path is open, the rules are clear, and the clock is ticking toward the 2025 horizon. 91, 6.